Hey guys, Vince here. By the end of this video, you'll know how to create a line chart with ChartJS with multiple data sets, as well as how to configure the options for how it visually looks. Let's begin. Alrighty, firstly we'll go ahead and have our standard HTML doc type boilerplate, and then we'll bring in the Bootstrap CDN. Now, Bootstrap isn't required for ChartJS, but we'll be using it for just some basic styling for our page, and then we'll pull in the actual ChartJS CDN along with our line chart.js just to keep our JavaScript separate from our HTML. Now we'll go ahead and create a bootstrap row with a div that spans 10 columns, and inside of that div, we'll create a card with a card body. And finally, we create our canvas element with an ID of my chart. Now that ID is what we'll be passing as our context parameter to our new chart here in just a moment. So the first thing we need to do with our JavaScript is define our labels and datas arrays. The months array here will end up being our x-axis labels, and the sales array will be our y values for our data set. Next, we'll instantiate our chart object, passing the canvas ID from earlier as the first parameter, known as the context. Secondly, we'll create our chart config. Here we'll set the chart type to line, and then we'll create our data object, which will contain our labels, as well as a datasets array. Now, inside of that datasets array, we'll have an object for each dataset. That dataset object will have our label, our border color, which is the line color, and then the data, which will be set to our sales array. And here, if we refresh, we'll see a nice line chart here with a green sales line. So one of the great things here about ChartJS is actually how easy it is to customize just about anything you can think of visually of the chart. So I'm not going to go through it all here, but as we can see, there's a lot of different options that we can set. So let's go ahead and play with this here. Let's set the border width to 5, the fill value to true, the fill color, so the color of that fill as an RGBA string with 0.1 opacity, and then our line tension to 0.4 to make it a bit less jagged. Alrighty, let's go ahead and add a second data set to our chart. This requires us to have a new array. Let's call that refunds array. And then we'll copy our first data set object as the next item in our data sets array. And we'll go through and update the different properties for the label, the border color, background color, and set our data set to our refunds array and refresh, which will draw our second data set here on our chart. Next, let's change it up a bit by setting the border width here on our sales dataset to 10 and setting fill to false on our second dataset. Now that you guys know how to set specific dataset options, let's take a look at configuring overall chart options, which will of course affect all datasets. Here on the ChartJS docs for line charts, we see the namespace for line options is in options.elements.line. So let's go ahead and make options elements line here on our chart object or chart configuration. And then we'll go ahead and set a tension value of 0.5 and a border width of 5. And then we'll go ahead and remove those extra visual properties from the individual data sets for this to take effect. Oh yeah, I meant to mention earlier that you can also set the border color as an RGBA value instead of a straight color. So next up, in the next 30 seconds or so, let's go ahead and make the chart look more modern by removing the grid lines. In the docs, if we silo down into the axis styling, we'll see that we can set the axis grid display property to false. So let's go ahead and do that here. Let's go ahead and in our options, we're going to set scales, X grid display to false. And then we'll go ahead and do the same here for Y, Y grid display false. I really hope you've been enjoying these videos on ChartJS. And if you're looking for more videos like this, as far as ChartJS or other JavaScript libraries, be sure to subscribe to the channel. And I will see you guys next time.